now, please welcome Annie's List Board Chair, Laura Hernandez.
Welcome to the Annie's List 2021 Houston celebration. My name is Laura Hernandez, and I am proud to serve as Annie's List Board Chair. It is truly wonderful to be in the presence of so many incredible people who are committed to creating a more equitable Texas. We know that without equal representation in our leadership, we cannot accomplish equity in our communities. Annie's List and its mission have been priorities for me since before Annie's List ever existed. My late mother, Barbie Hernandez, was a feminist, a fighter, and an advocate. My mother didn't wait to be invited to the proverbial table. She brought her own chair because she had a passion for using her voice to speak up for those whose voices had been silent. My mother learned early in her career that if she didn't go into spaces where decisions were made and let her voice be heard, then she was doing her community and her family a disservice. She used to bring me to volunteer on campaigns and off to community meetings. And she took me with her because she was a single parent and lacked childcare. And that was a really long time ago, and we're still dealing with the lack of childcare. But it was also important for her to see, for her, that I see and experience what it looked like for a woman to step into her power and create change. Change for her family and change for her community. I often refer to this as at this time when my mom was taking me along to these events and making me volunteer, was the best education money could not buy. Before my mama became an activist, though, and an advocate for her community, she needed some help to get to a platform where her voice could be heard. Annie's List provides the step stool for women candidates to reach the platform, especially women of color, to step into their power. Many of them are here today. If you get a chance, ask an Annie's List champion to tell you about the vital role Annie's List played in their campaign. A quick chat with Natalie Hurtado or Akila Basie, and you will understand why I have made a commitment to Annie's List and the work that they are doing to uplift a community of women who are taking charge and working for a better future and a better Texas. I have seen this organization grow and be rebirthed into a wonderfully diverse institution. And while there have been growing pains and lessons learned, our future has never been brighter. I am so grateful for all of your support, whether it's a shout out on social media or a donation. Your contribution to this work is invaluable. Thank you for gathering here today. And on behalf of everyone at Annie's List, thank you for joining us in our movement. I now have the honor of introducing Dr. Carla Braley. Dr. Carla Braley is Vice Chair of the Texas Democratic Party and an Assistant Professor of Sociology at Texas Southern University. She has been a fierce advocate for her community. She has a passion for social justice, diversity, and inclusion, and the empowerment of women. More importantly, she believes that when women lead, we must unapologetically bring others with us. Frankly, this is why her voice is so important in Texas. We simply need more women to lead. As a matter of fact, that's why we're here today.
Please welcome Texas Democratic Party Vice Chair, Dr. Carla Braley.
Good morning. So glad to be here. Thank you, Laura, for those lovely remarks. My name is Dr. Carla Braley, and I am proud to be here today for this celebration of women who are leading the way. Thank you to Annie's List for providing this opportunity to support women who want to run for elected office. Thank you to the Annie's List board and staff for the work that they do every single day and for the commitment to uplifting Texas women and communities. Thank you to all of our elected officials here today, and I will be providing a list because you don't miss our elected officials. They work so hard for us. Today we have with us Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia. Senator Carol Alvarado. Senator Boris Miles. Judge Lena Hidalgo. Mayor Sylvester Turner. Council Member Carolyn Evans Shabazz. And we have a host of all the other elected officials. Please stand now so that you may be recognized. These are the women in the trenches, leading the battle to save democracy in our state. God knows we need that. Thank you to our co-chairs, Barry Mandel, Dr. Scott Sawyer, and my dear friend, Allie Peacock. And a special thank you to our generous sponsors for this event, Amber Mostyn, Dana Strassman, Liz Harper, and Adam Barth, and Allie Peacock. And now, we will be joined by our Congresswoman, Sheila Jackson Lee, who now serves in the historic district that was created for the late, great Honorable Barbara Jordan. I'm so delighted to be a resident of her district, and delighted about her mentorship and all that she does to keep fighting and to save our historic district. Let's welcome Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
I'm so moved to be in this room. The spirit is strong. Let me acknowledge my colleagues, Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, who I have the great privilege of serving with. To all of the judges, I see you over there, Judge, all of the judges who are so vital to us, all of those who will be on the ballot, all of the precinct judges, don't think that we're not standing on your shoulders, and all of the women, we thank you so very much. And of course, we have acknowledged, and you'll hear from our outstanding judge, Judge Lena Hidalgo, but I do want to acknowledge our county attorney and his history, of course, Kristen Menifee, who is here as well, making history. And of course, you will hear from the Speaker of Speakers, a man who walks in the light, comes from history, and will share that with you today. Senator Warnock, please give him another big hand. And of course, we are delighted to have Mayor Turner here, busy as he is, who serves in the greatest city in the world, Mayor Sylvester Turner. We're delighted to have him here as well. But I have the privilege, because I said I'm so moved to be in this room, and I just want to say these two simple sentences. I'm so grateful to Annie's List that is now, again, walking in the light of the history of this state, where they are needed now more than ever. Women are crying out to do what is right, to get in good trouble. Annie's List is powerful, and they need your support. And so those who have offered themselves as co-chairs, I'm particularly moved by their commitment to ensure that Texas no longer passes the denial of one's right to health care and even does not allow you the exceptions of incest and rape. We are in a need for the kind of leaders that I will call forward right now that will fight, 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 keeping the 18th as well as fighting for what is right. Barry Mandel, co-chair, Annie's List 2021. Barry, come on out. They're getting certificates of congressional recognition, and I'm delighted to present them to them. And well, Dr. Scott Sawyer, come on down. Oh, you can do better than that. These are co-chairs. Allie Peacock, come on down.
Please welcome Annie's List champion, Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo.
Judge Hidalgo is the first woman to be elected county judge and the second to be elected to be the Commissioner's Court. She earned her bachelor's degree from Stanford University and a joint degree in law and public policy from New York University and Harvard. Hidalgo's career experience includes working at the Texas Civil Rights Project, coordinating with advocacy groups to push for criminal justice reform, and working in Southeast Asia to promote transparency and accountability. She believes our region will remain competitive only through proactive and creative leadership on issues like flood control, transportation, criminal justice reform, and education. Judge Hidalgo is committed to ensuring that Harris County government is transparent, accessible, and accountable to every resident. She wants Harris County to be a place where everyone can attain the American dream. Judge Hidalgo has taken time out of her very busy schedule to join us briefly to support Annie's List mission to elect Texas women. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to the podium Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo.
It is just such a joy to be in a room and share some time with strong, progressive leaders. What a joy. And that's all of you. So I say a round of applause to that. And I do want to acknowledge Dr. Braley and Laura Hernandez, who spoke earlier, and everyone. I mean, I'm up for re-election next year, and I'm so relieved and inspired to know that I am going to be fighting alongside these people that I know are incredible leaders. And I do want to note, Congresswoman Jackson Lee spoke earlier, and we know that her district is under attack. And she and Congressman Al Green have been representing with incredible success for many years people who otherwise would not have a voice. And so I want to say, Congresswoman, to you and to the congressman, we stand with you in this fight. Now, I know we're excited to see each other, but really we're excited to see Reverend Warnock. And so, to the Reverend, your election has inspired us here in Texas. Welcome to Harris County. And I have to confess, and folks in the room will remember this, we had a friendly competition going in 2020. We had huge turnout in Harris County. We were celebrating our first day of early vote. We saw more people turn out in Harris County than in the entire state of Georgia. And we celebrated that. So sometimes everything is bigger in Texas. I just had to make a note of that, Reverend. All joking aside, things are tough right now in our state. Things are dire. We are at a time where voting rights are not just being stripped away, they're being covered by a veil of criminality to make voting scary. We're at a time where abortion is all but outlawed in our state. We are at a time where the state has eliminated any semblance of common sense gun laws. When teachers are being gagged from speaking about racism in our history. And a lot of people in this room, this isn't their first time here. They've been fighting for years to make progress in this state. And we get the first woman vice president, and we have this incredible wave of women elected in 2018, including myself, thanks to you all. And then now, next thing we know, we're going backwards. It's frustrating. It's hard. But we're tougher than that. We keep marching with an eye toward progress, with an eye toward the future. That is what we do. And I believe that Reverend Warnock's presence here is not just evidence that things are changing, but is evidence that change is impending. And I hope that the changes we're making in Harris County, thanks to all of you, are also a symbol and a demonstration that change is around the corner. It's just not easy. It's just not easy. And so in Harris County, I couldn't have won without the support of the people in this room and the support of Annie's List. And we've made the largest environmental investment in 30 years. We've worked to support families through early childhood education, through investments in homelessness, disaster recovery that is equitable. We've made the most accessible elections in the country and so much more, and that scares them. So that's why they're doubling down, because the largest county in this state is demonstrating that strong, progressive leadership, mind you, by a woman, works. So to all of you, I say first, thank you, and then let's go. Let's keep marching, keep organizing, keep registering people to vote, keep turning people out, keep winning. We're gonna take some bruises along the way, but that is okay. That's how you win, and the Reverend, I'm sure, will tell you that. So I will see you all in the trenches, and I look forward to it. Please join me in welcoming a powerhouse of a woman, someone who has dedicated her life to fighting for diversity in our state, someone I personally admire for her passion, for her intelligence, and with whom I share a deep commitment to impactful policy, bold policy.
Please welcome Annie's List Executive Director, Royce Brooks.
Hey, y'all. It's been a long time. It's such a privilege to come together in person, and the Annie's List team is so grateful to once again be in community with so many friends. Y'all, Annie's List was founded in 2003 by a group of women who saw their representation in the ledge being systematically erased by gerrymandering. Does that sound familiar? But since Annie's List's founding, Democratic women's representation in the Texas legislature has increased by 35%. Annie's List has had more than 160 victories throughout our history, and more than 50 of those have been flipped seats. But our work isn't just about running up the numbers on women in office. It's about the meaningful change that those women are able to make on behalf of Texans. And this year, during the worst, cruelest series of legislative sessions in recent memory, our Annie's List champions never stopped fighting for Texans. Representative Tony Rose authored and passed a law to improve the lives of Texas moms and babies by extending Medicaid coverage from 60 days to 6 months after birth. Representative Victoria Neave authored and passed multiple bills to combat sexual violence. Since her passage of the Lavinia Masters Act, there's been an 80% reduction in rape kit backlogs in Texas. Y'all can clap for that. And as Dean of the Democratic Caucus and as Chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, respectively, Chairwoman Sinfronia Thompson and Representative Nicole Collier were leaders in the quorum break to fight voter suppression and successfully lobbied Congress to expedite voting rights legislation like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And 27 Annie's List champions took the fight to protect our voting rights all the way to DC, including our Houston champions. Senator Carol Alvarado stood on the floor of the Texas Senate for 15 grueling hours for what is right and what is just. And it worked. The women Annie's List helped to elect forced the country to look Texas's voter suppression tactics squarely in the face. And they forced federal action to protect the voices and the votes of every one of us. Our champions are creating policies that make this a better, safer Texas, and without their work, this kind of progress just doesn't happen. Now, not everyone loves the expansion of women's political power. Greg Abbott and his friends look at the steady increase in the number of progressive women in office and the ferocity of the fight from Annie's List champions, and they're scared to death. That's why Republicans are using every mechanism to roll back progress, to steal our power, and to silence our voices. We all know about the abortion ban, and most of us know about the brave Texas doctor, Dr. Alan Braid, who defied the law and performed an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, putting his practice and his livelihood at risk. And when asked why he did it, he said, quote, "I acted because I had a duty of care to this patient, as I do for all patients, and because she has a fundamental right to receive this care." Y'all, it sometimes seems like fewer and fewer people subscribe to the idea of a duty of care. The idea that we live in community with each other, that we rise and fall together, that we owe something to our fellow Texans. Still fewer people actually seem willing to risk their own comfort or safety to uphold that duty. But Houston, y'all know something about showing up for your community. You've pulled neighbors out of flooding homes. You've gotten clean water and blankets to freezing senior citizens in the midst of a dangerous winter storm. And during a deadly pandemic, you set a new record for voter turnout and voted Trump out of office. Because that is what Houston does. You show up when Texas needs you. Houston is leading the fight for progress in our state. And it's a fight that doesn't just have political casualties, it has a body count. Tears shed, but also blood shed. Lives lost. I'll be frank, right now, the fight is hot. It's dangerous. We are living in a dangerous time for women and for the people who are supporting and uplifting women's rights and women's leadership, and fighting for a Texas that includes everyone. But if we're ever going to build the Texas we wish existed, we have to put our own comfort and safety on the line. Annie's List is in this fight with you, and it's never been comfortable, and it's never been safe, and it's never stopped. We're fighting for a better Texas for the young woman who finds herself facing a difficult decision with her pregnancy, for the trans kid who just wants to join the baseball team, for the parents who want to send their children to school and know that they are safe, whether from COVID or from gun violence. Y'all, we're fighting for a Texas where someday, sometime, Texans don't have to fight anymore. But until that day, the fight won't stop. And we know Houston won't either, and neither will Annie's List. Thank you.
Please welcome our keynote speaker, U.S. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock.
Well, hello, Houston, Texas. I'm a Baptist preacher. Y'all got to do better than that. Hello, Houston, Texas. Harris County. Listen, it's so wonderful to be here. And God bless each and every one of you and your families. I'm honored and delighted history, and to be with the women of Annie's List, an amazing coalition of women who are making a huge difference in the state of Texas and all across the country. Let's hear for Annie's List. Led by a fearless woman who stands in the spirit of the Miriams of the world who rejoice when we cross the Red Sea, the Hagars of the world who stand up in the wilderness in transitional spaces and never lose the faith, the Fannie Lou Hamers of the world who are so powerful that when they show up on television, an American president has to make an excuse for why he has to interrupt because they're afraid of female voices, and yet Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." I feel that spirit in this room. Let's hear it for Royce Brooks. Come on, let's hear it for Royce. Let's hear it for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be among Southern progressive women who are working so tirelessly to create a future that's worthy of all of our children. And I just dropped by Texas to let you know that I'm in the fight with you. Long before I ran for office, I believed and I supported a woman's right to choose. It actually started in my work as a college student, believe it or not, where part of how I paid my way through Morehouse College is I worked for the Georgia Division of Public Health, and they hired me to set up teen peer counseling programs, work with teen peer counseling programs around the country, around the state, where we were helping young people to make healthy choices, to understand their bodies. We were trying to get the teenage pregnancy rate down and trying to get the infant mortality rate down. And there, under the leadership of an outstanding Spelmanite, Dr. Virginia Floyd, I got introduced to the work of public health. I was the only teenager, 19 years old, appointed by the then governor of Georgia to the Southern Regional Task Force on Infant Mortality, trying to deal with the fact that America, the most developed and the richest country in the world, has miserably high rates of infant mortality and maternal mortality. And if you really are pro-life, you ought to care about that. I mean, our rates of maternal mortality, women dying trying to give life, are criminally high. And for black women, they're 3 and 4 times higher than white women, and that's controlling, believe it or not, for income and insurance. You understand what I'm saying? So don't say, well, yeah, black women have higher rates of, it's sad, but of course, because they're more likely to be poor. No, when you control for income and insurance, professional black women, college-educated black women, and yet we countenance that kind of disparity in our country. And so I can think of a whole lot of things that politicians ought to be working on rather than trying to spend their time in a woman's patient room when she's talking to her doctor. I think that a patient's room I have a profound reverence for life and an abiding respect for choice. The question is, whose choice is it? That's the question. And I think that a patient's room is too small and cramped a space for a woman, her doctor, and the United States government. We don't need that many people in the room. And so let's look for common ground. We've seen the frames of this argument play out now year after year, decade after decade. Why don't we work on the things that we can work on together? If you really are pro-life, let's work together on infant mortality. Let's work together on maternal mortality. If you really are pro-life, come let us reason together. If you really are pro-life, why don't you expand Medicaid in Texas and in Georgia and in all 12 non-expansion states? Show me that you're pro-life. Otherwise, you're not pro-life, you're just pro-birth. 600,000 Georgians in the coverage gap. 760 Texans in the coverage gap. People are literally dying for lack of coverage. No coverage at all. And when we talk about expanding Medicaid, we're talking about the working poor. Now, I think that health care is a human right. Everybody ought to have access to health care. It's a human right. But for those who like to moralize and weaponize the rhetoric of work, and I believe in work. I had a daddy who drove that into me. You may have heard me talk about it. My daddy used to wake me up every morning. Get up, get dressed, put shoes on, get ready. I believe in work. But when you talk about the people in the coverage gap, by and large, you're talking about the working poor. You're talking about people who go to work every day. They're not paid a livable wage because we won't raise the minimum wage. They work 2 and 3 jobs. They're not poor enough to get conventional Medicaid, but they're not wealthy enough to afford private insurance. They're in the gap. and they die for no coverage at all. It's right to expand Medicaid. It's the right thing to do. It's also the smart thing to do. If you want to strengthen the workforce, if you want to lift up our economy, if you want to create jobs, in the state of Georgia, we've had 10 hospitals to close in 10 years in rural areas where they're more likely to vote for the other side. Their hospitals are closing, and it's devastating healthcare in rural Georgia and in rural Texas, and it's devastating the economy in small places where the hospital might be the biggest employer. So we've got to stand up together. And that's why we've got to get these two bills across the finish line. We've got to get the infrastructure bill across the finish line, and we've got to get the Build Back Better bill across the finish line. Because we need infrastructure, we need roads and bridges and broadband, but we also need child care, we also need community college, we also need affordable housing. And so that's the work that's in front of us, Congresswoman Lee, and I'm so proud to do this work with you in the United States Congress. So thank you so very much, Annie's List, in this moment, for standing up for choice. Folks say, how can you be a pro-choice pastor? Have you read the Bible? I mean, choice is fundamentally biblical. That's the first thing the Lord gave us, was a choice. And it's not surprising at all to me that the folk who don't believe in the right to choose also do not believe in the right to vote. I believe in the right to vote. In fact, I believe that a vote is a kind of prayer for the kind of world we desire for ourselves and for our children. And I believe that democracy is the political enactment of a spiritual idea, that grand and noble idea, the history of humankind, that all of us have a spark of the divine, that we matter. And because we have a spark of the divine, because we are a curious mix of dust and divinity, of sod and sky, of pain and possibility, that all of us ought to have a voice in our democracy and a role in choosing its direction. So democracy at root is about our humanity. It is about the covenant that we have with one another as an American people. It is a recognition that sometimes our side will lose, sometimes the other side will lose, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but it's about the fundamental commitment that we're in this covenant together and that we're not going to break up the rules. We're not going to change the rules. If the people don't like what we're saying, you don't change the rules, you change your message, you change your agenda. Politicians should not be picking the people get to pick the politicians. And so we got to stand up against voter suppression. I had dinner last night with Lucy Baines Johnson, youngest daughter of Lyndon Baines Johnson, and I sat there, I thought about all that it took to pass voting rights in 1965. It took a president, but somebody had to give the president some power. Lyndon Baines Johnson signed it with his pen, but the writing really wasn't etched in ink, it was etched in blood. John Lewis gave a little blood, as he used to say on that bridge. Schwerner Chaney and Goodman, two Jews and an African American, were killed in the dark days fighting for that fundamental right to vote. Viola Luiso, a white woman, lost her life because she understood that her destiny was tied up with sisters and brothers who did not have the right to vote. And here we are again. the more things change. Sometimes it seems the more they stay the same. We've seen a lot of progress, but we've got work to do, and there are folk who are trying to take us back. And I'll tell you why they're trying to take us back. I know you look at this terrible bill in Texas, and it's terrible. This voter suppression bill in Georgia is terrible, and I want to thank the Texas legislators who held vigil, who kept on holding up the light. I want to say thank you for making your way to Washington, D.C. and to the Capitol and telling us about what was going on in Texas. I know at the end of the day they passed the bill, but I hope you know that your standing up absolutely made a difference. Thank you so much for your voice and for your courage. And I met with them when they came to D.C. They met with me, met with others of my colleagues. And I thought to myself, these Texas legislators who have left their homes and their families. Somebody told me a wedding got postponed. Is that true? Sick family members. Think about all the things you leave when you leave your house for weeks at a time. And they did that because they believed in democracy. And I looked at their courage and I said, my colleagues could just use a little bit, just a little piece of that courage. We can get this bill passed. We can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We can pass the Freedom to Vote Act. So we're not about to give up. I believe in democracy. In fact, shortly after I came to Ebenezer Baptist Church as the pastor, 16 years ago, I came in 2005 in the fall. I came to Ebenezer 2 months after Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana, New Orleans. And a few months after that devastation, where we saw the natural disaster of Hurricane Katrina and the unnatural disasters of poverty and racism that left the folk in the old Ninth Ward stuck, and members of the media calling them refugees instead of American citizens. You all remember that? And then a few months after that, just a few short months after that, Louisiana decided to have a municipal election. The problem was Katrina evacuees had been displaced to about 40 different states. And Louisiana didn't seem to care much whether they had a way to vote or not. Under such devastating circumstances, people displaced from their homes, having lost everything. Some lost livelihoods, others lost lives of loved ones. You would think that they would have provided almost for everybody an opportunity to vote by mail, to vote by absentee. But they seem to be interested in changing the complexion and the character of New Orleans. And the irony was, in that moment, we were boasting. It was 16 years ago. We were boasting that we were taking democracy to Iraq. I said to myself, if democracy is Iraq, they ought to try it in Louisiana. So we organized something called the Freedom Caravan right out of the basement of Ebenezer Baptist Church in a room where Dr. King used to meet. And I just announced to Atlanta, I was young, brash, didn't have sense enough to be afraid. I just announced that we were going to have something called the Freedom Caravan. And SEMA, I just stood up and I said, if you are in Atlanta and you from New Orleans, you want to vote, Ebenezer Baptist Church will take you back. And I hadn't raised a dime. I didn't have one bus. I told you I was young and brash, too naive to be afraid. And we raised the money. We put a group of doctors and lawyers on these buses. We made the announcement on the radio. We organized something called the Freedom Caravan. Now, Louisiana got part of it right. The election was on a Saturday. And so we gathered on the Friday night, had prayer service, put all those folks on the buses, and we drove the 8 hours from Atlanta to New Orleans, put those folk on the ground in New Orleans, and then delivered them to their individual precincts so that they could exercise that fundamental right The right to vote. And because no good deed shall go unpunished, you know what happened? They had a runoff. So I had to raise some more money, find some more buses, put those folk back on the buses. I was trying to finish my PhD dissertation, had just gotten to the church, barely unpacked, had to get on the bus again, take those folk back to New Orleans so they could vote, because I think the vote is just that important. And I was so proud of those sisters and brothers who had lost everything, but they thought it was important that their voice be heard in the future of their city and the future of their democracy. And so let's stand together. And let's find ways to work together. And sometimes if you get in the fight, you'll be surprised to see what the Lord decides to do and who the Lord decides to use. Don't get discouraged. Hear me? Don't get discouraged. I know there's an assault on voting rights, an assault on reproductive rights. The other day they decided to play with the debt ceiling again, risk sending the whole economy over a cliff. Can you imagine the devastation to ordinary people? But I couldn't help but think about that the way I think about things as a preacher. I think that one of the characteristics of evil is that evil always goes too far. And thus it contains within itself the seed of its own destruction. Evil always goes too far. And as you watch, don't encourage me, as you watch, what is unfolding, you see the violent and desperate moves to stop people from being able to vote, shutting down women's ability as if you understand better than women how to manage their lives, playing with the debt ceiling, marginalizing working people and members of the LGBTQ plus community and black and brown communities and poor folk. Evil always goes too far. I thought about my grandmother down in Waycross, Georgia. You know where that is? Waycross, Georgia. One day I saw her chop off the head of a snake. When she did that, that thing began to wiggle violently. It looked more alive then than it was before she hit it. But it was shaking violently, not because it was living, but because it was dying. You keep fighting. White supremacy and bigotry and xenophobia will have its last gasp when the people stand up and make sure their voices are heard in their democracy. And so as I close, and nobody believes a Baptist preacher when he says, as I close. Congresswoman, the other day, a strange thing happened. We were passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill in the Senate. And a strange thing happened. Something emerged, hear me out. I know who I'm talking to, don't get mad, hear me out. Something emerged in the midst of that process called the Cruz-Warnock Amendment. Let me talk fast. I've been doing all right so far. And Twitter caught fire and said, what in the world is the Cruz-Warnock Amendment? It's very simple. There's a road, a highway, that you need built out here in Texas. It's called I-14. And as it turns out, that same highway that you need in Texas, it runs through Georgia. You need it in Texas and we need it in Georgia. And so my erstwhile colleague, Ted Cruz, and I on the Commerce Committee, we couldn't get it done on committee, and so we had to get it done on the floor of the Senate as we were passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And he stood up on the floor of the Senate and began to argue for it, offered a short statement, and then it was my turn. And I stood up and I couldn't believe it as I heard myself say words I never thought I would say in my life. You can associate myself with the comments of Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. The whole chamber was in disbelief. I even saw Mitch McConnell smile a little bit. They couldn't believe it. They erupted in laughter. And they said, if Warnock and Cruz are on the same amendment, let's pass it by unanimous consent. And I thought about that. Same road that goes through Texas, goes through Alabama. That same road runs through Georgia and it goes past poor communities and wealthy communities and white communities and black communities and brown communities. It goes past the schoolyards of children who have a chance and those who are just trying to breathe. It's the same road, and our job is to find that road that runs through our humanity. There's a real sense in which we cannot get away from one another. We are stuck here with each other. So let's keep traveling down that road. Let's sign up as members of the Freedom Caravan. Because that's what America is at its best. It's a freedom caravan. White sisters and brothers got on that bus and they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that men and women, actually Thomas Jefferson said that all men, he meant men, are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. But across the basin in Washington, D.C., across from Thomas Jefferson's statue, there's a black man standing there with his hands folded, looking at Thomas Jefferson as if to say, did you mean what you said when you said what you meant? America's freedom caravan. Black and brown sisters had to get on that bus and say, we too are a part of that road that leads to freedom. Immigrants got on the bus and said, we too are a part of the freedom caravan. Women in the 1920s had to get on that bus and say, we too get to determine how to get to that road that leads to freedom. Members of the LGBTQ community and workers had to get on that bus. And God knows we need to make sure that all of our children can get on that bus that leads to freedom. So let's work together. Let's pray together. Let's stay together. Let's stay on this fight until we win. God bless each and every one of you.
Please welcome Annie's List champion, State Representative Senfronia Thompson.
Hello, Houston. I wished I was there with you today, but I'm here in Austin continuing to fight for Texas health, safety, and God-given right, while Republicans are here chipping away at our rights. It's been a long, hard year for Democrats and for Texas, from voter suppression laws to laws that suppresses women's right to choose what is good for her and her family. I've been in the fight every step of the way, and so is Annie's List. When Texas women need them, Annie's List is there to answer the call. Thank you, Annie. Annie's List, thank you for always being there for women when they need you. I'm proud to be the champion and to carry on the legacy of women like Barbara Jordan and former Governor Ann Richards, who paved the way for so many. We need every last one of you to commit to carry on the great legacy of Texas women by becoming a part of the movement and investing in Annie's List. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for helping us carry on the legacy of great women. Please be a part of Annie's List. I have been, and I invite you to join the movement. Thank you.
Please welcome Annie's List friend, Amber Mostyn.
Hey, Annie's List. It's Amber Mostyn here. And I'm so disappointed that I couldn't be there in person with y'all today. I mean, what an amazing program, right? We heard from some of our Texas stars like Symphonia Thompson and Lena Hidalgo, and national star and inspiration, Senator Warnock. And if I'm being candid, I need a little inspiration these days. It's been pretty grim in Texas lately. But Annie's List gives me hope because I know that the staff, our Annie's List elected officials, and our candidates to come are going to be in the arena fighting for all of us Texans. And I want to be in the arena fighting right alongside with them, because I know that Republicans here in Texas do everything they can to exclude women from the progress and success that we deserve for our families and for our own selves. But Annie's List champions are there every step of the way to stand up for what's right. Now, we've heard a lot here today about the work that Annie's List champions are doing for women and families. Their leadership and the leadership of the women that they're working to elect is obviously needed now more than ever. And we all know that Annie's List doesn't just recruit candidates, they invest time and energy and money to ensure that women running have what they need to create a legacy of change and make Texas better for all of us Texans, regardless of race, gender, or social status, right? You know those races where you're sitting around thinking, why didn't we have a candidate in that race? Or why didn't that candidate do this or that? Well, we all know one of the major answers to that question: money. It takes money to run a great winning campaign. And I want to invite you to invest in the future of Texas. I want you to join me today in contributing to the movement and donating to Annie's List. So for those of you who are new, if this is your first Annie's List event, or if you're someone's guest, there are forms on your table. Grab them, fill them out, and donate today. Or better yet, grab your phone. Go ahead, pull it out right now. Pick up your phone and go to your text messaging app. Text the number 76278, 76278, and in the body of the message, you're going to put Annie 2021. So 76278, Annie 2021. If you can't figure out how to do it, there's going to be people circulating around who can help, or I bet you some of your table mates can help you figure it out. Listen, I can't express to you how much I appreciate you being here to support Annie's List, our elected officials, and our candidates to come. Because we're not giving up. I'm not giving up. I know you're not giving up. I'm a former Annie's List board chair, and I've been active since almost the very beginning. And I never in a million years thought that I would find myself here almost 20 years later, struggling to protect the very existence of Roe v. Wade in Texas. But here we are, and we have a choice. We can either give up, go home, shrug our shoulders, or we can hop in the arena. And the way to do that today is to donate to Annie's List, so they have the resources that they need to recruit, train, and elect women across Texas.
And now, please welcome Harris County Democratic Party Chair, Otis Evagaro.
You know, the first two rules of public speaking: never follow a preacher and never follow a senator. And, well, I'm following Senator Warnock, so I'm obviously off to a great start. My name is Otis Evagaro, and I am proud to serve as the Harris County Democratic Party Chair. I'm also a proud supporter of Annie's List. I actually, in 2018, was a proud graduate of Annie's List Campaign School. So they really are building the pipeline. And I've had the pleasure of running campaigns that are for Houston women that are candidates and Annie's List champions. And I want to take a moment out and I want to thank the Houston community leaders, the event co-chairs, the event committee, and you, the generous sponsors and guests who have given so much to Annie's List over the years. The work is not possible without you. I want to thank Senator Warnock for being here and giving us inspiring words today. I want to be a part of that freedom caravan. I want to thank Annie's List Executive Director, Royce Brooks. And I want to emphasize this greatly. A fearless Black woman. I'll say that again. A fearless Black woman who I'm proud to work alongside in the fight for progress in Texas. As you all know, Annie's List is a statewide political organization who recruit, train, and elect progressive, pro-choice women across the state. Last cycle, Annie's List endorsed over 40 progressive women up and down the ballot, a record high for the organization. Many of those races were based right here in Houston, Texas, and because of you, we have State Representative Ann Johnson. Annie's List has been breaking down barriers for women in Texas for nearly 20 years. Since their founding, Annie's List has had more than 160 victories, and Democratic women's representation in the Texas legislature has increased by 35%. But my friends, I tell you, it's not enough. It's not enough. The stakes right now are higher than ever. I don't call him by his name, but the Texas governor right now and his compadres, Texas Republican leadership, have failed you. Redistricting, abortion access, refusing to expand Medicaid. Right now on the House floor, they are attacking transgender children. Right now. The pandemic, which we are still in, and the damn grid that still hasn't been fixed. But I have good news. There's a way to win, because we are going to win. The way to do it is we've got to support and give future pro-choice progressive women and women of color in particular everything they need to come out on top. Emphasize everything. We need a strong slate of women, yes, women, for office up and down the ballot in 2022. So can y'all do me a favor today? Can y'all do me a big favor? Can you bring out your cell phones? Can you get your cell phones out? Text Annie, ANNIE 2021 to 76278. The number is going to be on the screen. It's going to be on the program in front of you. Give. We have a goal right now of raising $20,000. But see, I'm a big dreamer. Let's raise $30,000 right now. Because we said we're going to do everything to elect women up and down the ballot. There should be envelopes on your table with a pen and paper. Please keep giving, because Annie's List needs you in this fight today. I'm going to take a point of personal privilege here and just say, thank you all for coming out here. This is really important. I have the privilege of working in the state legislature, and the assault that we did on Texans and our democracy is downright abhorrent, deplorable, and disgusting. So I leave you with this as Royce comes up. Continually make good trouble. Continually make necessary trouble. Continue to make noise, because our fragile democracy absolutely demands it. Thank you all so much.
Welcome again to Annie's List Executive Director, Royce Brooks.
What an amazing way to end our program. Thank you all for coming out today. Annie's List couldn't be more grateful for your support, for your presence, for your fight. A special thank you again to our co-chairs, our board, our Annie's List staff, the Rice Hotel and staff, and everyone who came to support us. Thank you.